Okay, so today I would like to talk about adding and subtracting integers. This is going to be part one of a two-part video. Hopefully you watch both of these videos. I'm going to describe this as really these numbers going to be going to war. And so this scenario here, I have 3 plus 5. Now hopefully everybody understands the answer to that. But I really want to talk about this through the integers, the positive and negative whole numbers. If I have 3, I can just relate this with 1, 2, 3 positive symbols. If I have 5 positive symbols that also show up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I look at these, I talk about these guys going to war. These guys are all on the same side. Nobody is going to fight here. You'll notice this scenario here, I'm going to end up with simply 8 positive values. Second scenario that we bump into is a scenario in which I have actually negative 3 plus 5. This negative 3 could actually be represented with 3 negative symbols, and the 5 can be represented with 5 positive symbols here. And you'll notice what's going to happen is when these guys go to war, these negatives and these positives are going to start killing each other off. So those guys end up canceling, those guys end up canceling, and another pair ends up canceling. You'll notice here that I'm actually left over with 2 positive values. In other words, negative 3 plus 5 actually equals positive 2. Okay, so you might ask yourself, well, what happens when all negatives show up? Well, this is very much related to when all positives show up. If I have negative 3 minus 5, I'm actually going to end up with 1, 2, 3 negatives, and I have 5 more negatives that show up. This just turns into one big party. None of these guys are going to fight because they're all on the same side. And so if you take a look at this here, I just end up with 8 negative values. In other words, negative 3 minus 5 actually equals negative 8. Okay, so the last scenario that is a scenario in which I actually have positive 3 minus 5. Once again, if we represent 3, positive 3 with 3 positive symbols, 1, 2, 3 positive symbols, and negative 5 with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negative symbols, you'll notice that these pairs start canceling each other off. And what do I end up with? But I end up with a scenario in which I have negative 2. So 3 minus 5 actually equals negative 2. Okay, so to close here, I want to discuss some bigger numbers. How do you deal with integers that are larger? Obviously, we don't want to put down 20 positive values and 30 positive values to be able to count these up. And we start looking at this from an understanding standpoint of how these integers actually go to war and who actually wins. This first scenario here I have 20 positives and I have 30 positives. These guys are all friends. They're all on the same side. They're going to end up with simply a positive 50. Same goes for the second scenario here. I have 20 negatives and I have 30 negatives. They're all on the same side. They're all friends. There's simply going to be 50 negatives. The third scenario is where things get a little bit different. Here I have 20 positives and I have 30 negatives. If I think about this, they're going to start canceling each other off. But the 30 is actually bigger than the 20. It is a larger number. The absolute value of it is larger. Therefore, the 30 is going to win. It's going to win the war by how many? And so we know that it's going to win, and therefore my answer is going to be negative. 20 minus 30 is actually going to give me a negative 10. The last scenario here, I have 20 negatives and I have 30 positives. This scenario, I notice when they start canceling, they go to war, the 30 is going to win, and it's going to win by positive 10. And so my answer is going to be 10. Hopefully this has helped you with your addition and subtraction of integers. And part 2 is going to talk about some kind of special cases that we bump into. Hope you tune in.